My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Andy. Welcome to
Good evening.
our Football Book podcast. How's things, mate?
Very good. Yourself?
Yes.
Keeping on, ready for Christmas?
Yes, we're all, well, I say we're all ready. I think the wives and the girlfriends and the partners get it already. Generally, us
Correct.
blokes do nothing. We just turn up for Christmas, and that's the way it goes. I think, like humanity, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the female of the species.
Well, absolutely. I see it's the 15th today, so when we're doing this podcast, and that means to me I've got 10 more days.
Yes.
So,
yes, not only are you brilliant with books and academia, etc., you're bloody good at mathematics. I love the way, on the top of your head, not even a sparing a thought moment, you straight away pinpointed there's 10 days to Christmas.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you for giving me that. So, I'm not sure if it was that hard, but
do you get up and do the advent calendar thing still, or are you too old?
Yes.
I'm too old.
No,
Corey,
I
but
do.
you're a lot younger than me.
Yeah, I do. Well, I've got a daughter, so she's got one kind of thing, and I remind her sometimes. So, but sometimes I'm tempted to have the chocolate myself.
Absolutely. And just briefly tell the listeners about myfootballbooks.com. I'm loving your... Have a good night, Bab. I'm loving your mugs, your book.
Thank you.
What are they called? Bookmarkers. And the way that you market myfootballbooks.com, I think it's fantastic. You're always putting out books from now, from then, and from the future as well. You're almost like one of these World Cup time travellers.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of putting it. Excellent. But no, thank you very much. So My Football Books, I'm on all the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but it's driven from the website that I created of recommended football books, those that's coming soon, one that's been recently released, and as you said, football has got a long history, so it covers all areas of the game, the beautiful game, both on and off the pitch. And thank you for the mention about I've got some merchandise, some football mugs, and football bookmarks. If you were to order them now with the post delays, etc., I think they should arrive by Easter. If you were to order anything.
Everyone's on strike.
Yeah, that's it. So, but I'll endeavour to get them a little bit earlier than that, fingers crossed. But no, it's from the website. It's essentially I'm here to promote football reading, and as I think I mentioned last night, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure when I've done my research, I now have the largest football book dedicated only website in the world that I am aware of. So, and the last thing I do is a monthly newsletter, send out to any subscribers, which is basically a review of what books have come out the previous month, what's coming out this month, and any recommended reads and other details around books that are featured basically during the month.
Fantastic. If Roy Castle and the McQuirters were still about, you'd be a record breaker. You would be on Record Breakers, wouldn't you? As, the most, as you've just alluded to there, the most prolific, shall we say, because I like that word, prolific, football book promoter, etc., in the world on this planet. There may be other worlds and other planets, and apparently Christmas we're going to have first contact with aliens, but at the moment we don't know about aliens, We don't know about whether they do play football or not. And if they do, they probably haven't got a better player than Messi. I think an appropriate place to start tonight would be the book that you recommended for the Current Views podcast this week, and that's 1923, Life in Football 100 years ago. So we're going to be looking at the future. You've got all your books and you go down your path. My path today is I'm going to be giving a shout out to all those books and players that I've interviewed and done podcasts with this year in 2022. I think I've done something like about 80 podcasts this year.
Wow, excellent. And how many hours is that? That must be a good few hours of material as well there.
Well, it's not just doing the podcast, it's doing the research for the podcast as well. So you're absolutely spot on. And as a consequence, I don't read that many books, but I do read about a third of a lot of books. A little bit like, at our age, where we go to bed, we put the telly on in the bedroom, and we rarely see the end of it.
Excellent. But I assume you've still got the 1970s by Richard Crooks.
Yes,
to hand.
The bookmark is still in there.
Excellent. For regular listeners, they'll know what I'm referring to.
Absolutely. It's in the hole of the wall, but as it's Christmas and we have 9 grandkids, the Christmas presents get put in the hole in the wall. So, Richard's book is in there with my bookmarker, and I will get it out in the new year because it is a fantastic read. And I am trying to double down and focus on 70s books. I have done a lot of that this year, and going forward, that's the decade that I really want to focus my attentions on.
What a decade as well. Yeah, absolutely.
1923. The White Horse final, Billy.
The Into This Wiles final, the
Villa player got that shot.
Yeah, Tommy Ball. There was actually the book came out just this year, actually, based on that very story, the Armistice Days. So, but it was just 1923. It's Life in Football 100 years ago. Obviously, it's still going to be relevant this time next year. So obviously, it's come out just before the start of the new year. But it takes as it says, like a deep dive into the match's personalities. It lit up the game over 100 years ago, and how it's changed and how it's massively changed, hasn't it? Certainly the last. Well, you could also say in the last 30 years of the Premier League, etc. But over the last 100 years, it talks very much about the football, but also about the social history of how fans and footballers lived. And how it's changed and what they ate, drank, and how they spent leisure time. So it covers a broad area, in, outside, and around the game itself. And then obviously the painful legacy of World War One on the game. That's followed before that, and the emergence of top professional football in Europe. And it's a unique look, the memorable year. In football and beyond. So fantastic read. And if anyone is interested in history and football, it ticks both boxes. And excellent book by Marvin Close and from the excellent Pitch Publishing. Yeah,
Pitch do some phenomenal titles. There are other publishing houses about there's a number of. What they tend to do, some publishing companies tend to look at history books, some look at other kind of books, don't they? But Pitch really cover a wide spectrum of football books, interesting football books as well. I'm always looking at Pitch titles and thinking, oh wow, that's a book that needed to be written, and Pitch just published it. So well done, Pitch. And well done to all the other publishing houses, because without them and without the authors, without the journalists, without people like you promoting them as well, Andy, people wouldn't hear of these books. And I think it's vital. Since 1992, when football was invented, I don't know how he got this book in 1923, because football wasn't about back then in 1923, of course.
yeah.
But
if you were to
you
lift
know,
the sky.
Yeah, absolutely. It is just about the now, and I don't like the now. I love the then. So well done to all these people that play their part in educating us about football, the beautiful game. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's probably fitting to say, coming up towards the end of another year, I think I started this website obviously during COVID, which was one of the upsides of having some time when the furlough was happening, which seems such a long time ago, doesn't it, now, COVID. But during those last 2 years, and probably the year or so before that, the football book industry, let's say, has really took off. And it's people like Pitch Publishing and the various other publishers out there that allow and give the authors the opportunities to put pen to paper and produce these. I sometimes am amazed, for example, like Pitch Publishing, how they manage to produce so many. Yeah. It's always fascinating, and the artwork they have of the books as well as brilliant, as well as you've seen. It really brings it to life as well. They look good.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, good. You need the money to invest into the books, and everybody needs to earn the corn, and hopefully they do, and it continues. And my first pick is one from Pitch Publishing. Gary Edwards, summer of '63, Revy's plan for Leeds United, and I've done a podcast with Gary about that. Great lad, phenomenal insight to Leeds United Football Club, and massive Leeds fan. Gary is. I really enjoyed his company making that podcast, and again, an iconic cover. It was phenomenal cover, great book.
Yeah, absolutely. And phenomenal writer. He's written a number of books. I couldn't even guess how many, but it must be. Well, I don't know how many, but he's prolific, isn't he, in Leeds? I think he's commonly called as. I think he features in the Leeds United matchday programme. I remember reading that. So he's done a lot of excellent books on Leeds United. What a great time that was, for Revy's plan for Leeds United, wasn't it? So.
Yes, and also as well, I did a podcast with John Giles. His name isn't Johnny; it's John Giles. Back in April. I think his autobiography is The Football Man, isn't it? And it's a particularly good read, and what a font of knowledge of the game of football John Giles is. So that's a nice little connection there, because in the summer of '63, literally it was the summer of '63, that John signed late summer, because it was after the first game of the season, and that iconic picture of Don Revie taking John Giles away from Manchester United Football Club into a bright new future at Leeds United with a team that he was building, and didn't he build a wonderful team at Leeds United, did Don Revie?
Absolutely. And I know the book covers, because I know there's the tag, isn't there, the Dirty Leeds tag, and it's prevailed since then, isn't it? Really, but
with that Dirty Leeds tag, when they looked at Dirty Leeds, it was all the Leeds United teams. It was the kids' teams. It was So I mean, they used to have about 7 teams in them days. So it was taking the disciplinary record from all of those teams, and it was a moniker that stuck. And I'm not saying that Leeds didn't put themselves about a bit, because they did, but every team had their hatchet men in those days, and John, in particular, got smashed a couple of times, once at Birmingham City, and then secondly at Chelsea, when Eddie McCready assaulted him. And John said, after that, I made sure that I got in there first. In fact, he did get Eddie back probably 7-8 years after, And he said to me in a podcast, I waited for him and I knew I could hit him now. And he hit him. And after, Eddie McCready says, John, what was that about? And he said that was about Stamford Bridge. All that 8 years ago. I think he said it was 8 years ago. He said, blimey, John. He said, no, I couldn't let that go. I couldn't let that go. So he had this little black book that him and Charlton, that whenever somebody laid it on him, they did get double dosings back.
That reminds me of the famous the interview when Clough had his infamous 44 days.
Yeah.
And he had that interview, didn't he, in the studio with Don Revie.
Yeah.
I always remember cracking. Clough had these lines, didn't he? But there was a line that Revie had said about they were top of the tables for entertainment, top of the tables for this. And Clough bit back straight away and say, you're also top of the table for disciplinary. Well, he made sure he got a little jive in there. So, it was infamous, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
That team. But what a team as well, though.
But again, because there's always an imbalance with Leeds cheating, Leeds dirty, and all the rest of it. But Leeds were cheated out as much as they were accused of cheating, particularly in the two European finals of 73, Cup Winners' Cup, and then the European Cup of 75. So it was always something that was levelled at Leeds, but it wasn't a particular level playing field because it was never balanced. But I think that always happens against really, really successful teams and people. They tend to have the mud thrown at them, but you don't tend to look at the balance inside of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. But he had a incredible relationship, didn't he, with Giles, with Billy Bremner, locals, didn't he?
Well, Alan Clark had the best relationship with Billy. They really were like brothers. Alan said to me, I'd done a podcast with Alan, and he says, Billy always, seen me as the brother that he never had, of course. Alan had a few brothers that all played the professional game. But a wonderful book. Gary Edwards, summer of 63, Revie's plan for Leeds United.
Excellent. Oh, what I would just add as well, because Gary Edwards, he wrote a book, I remember, about, because you mentioned about the cheating, or they were cheated out, weren't they? He did a book, No Glossing Over It, how football cheated Leeds United, and they missed out, didn't they, on the biggest prize, the European Cup in 75.
European Cup 75 and the Cup Winners' Cup in 73. And I'm not sure if it is that book, but Gary was telling me, when he was researching for a book and he was tracing the referees of the two finals.
Right.
He traced the referee of the 75 Cup final. Couldn't trace the one from 73,
Oh, right, okay.
And Alan Clark told me, because Alan wasn't there that night, I think it was played in Athens, wasn't it? I think it was in Greece that they played that final, if memory serves me right. And he said the referee arrived on the same plane as the Milan players. There
we go.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So what have you got for us? I'd like a few titles that you've enjoyed this year. You always put your recommendations on your website. So what's your top recommendations? And also what titles have we got coming out in 2023 as well, Andy? What's going to get our juices flowing?
Yeah, okay, excellent. Well, let me start. I suppose if I mix, what I like to do is just look at back like the books that have been recently released, so back in November. But I've also already I've done I do it every year. I do in line with the Advent calendar, so countdown to Christmas. So a book every day. So 24 books. And the one I talked about today was Remarkable Football Grounds. A new book that came out in November. It's by a guy called Ryan Herman, and anyone that loves what a good picture book. It's fascinating. It's not just your well-known football grounds. It's ones that just look incredible. The scenery, where they're set in. It's a magical book by Pavilion Books, another publisher, which I must admit I wasn't so familiar of until I've got this one. but it's a classic coffee table type book. Great imagery, and highly recommended. Fabulous book. Books of various shapes and sizes from across the world. But it's just beautifully put together. Really recommend it. So it covers a number of grounds. You got some really odd ones right up to like Tottenham Hotspur's ground. I don't know if you've ever been. I've not been myself, but it looks a stunning ground. That does, doesn't it? That's a modern style, isn't it? So which have their own different.
Did they in 442? Did they feature that book? Because I remember a few months ago in 442, they featured on a lot of football grounds from a book, and there were some iconic grounds, and then some real phenomenal, like top of a mountain in Wales and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I won't be surprised it's the same one. I won't be surprised if I've not seen 442 magazine, but I won't be surprised it's the same one. It came out recently, so if you've seen that recently, it would be. Yeah, because it is books that's well known as well, like Boca Juniors ground, which is a ground I'd love to go one day. So, but it's iconic kind of ground there when. The atmosphere of that particular one. But it's also like grounds like Craven Cottage, got some great character about it. So it's a mixture of grounds, both the modern, the ones that look beautiful, but also the ones that have scenes of, high in the mountains, as you say. The one on the front cover is literally on a little island pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So a collection of islands. So how on earth the away team gets to the grounds, I have no idea. But it's a good old trek. But it's a great book. Remarkable football.
They probably get there the same way as Birmingham City fans arrive when they go to Millwall. Excellent.
So, no, great book, that particular one. And if I could pick out another one then, I suppose from the same as well, that come out this month, is the 3 lines on a shirt.
Okay,
and it's the official history of the England football jersey. It's another classic, I'll use the phrase because everyone's probably familiar with it, the coffee table kind of book. It's a massive book, it's proper heavy. I've got it in my hand at the moment, and it's quite a chunk. It's proper hardback, and it just goes through. So it's both the pictures of all the football shirts that have been match worn, but it's a history as well of England right away from the starts in the
1872.
That's it. Yes, exactly that. You got it. Yeah. So when the 30th of November 1872, when they first played a match against Scotland, in Scotland, I think it was at a cricket ground in Glasgow.
There is a book, isn't there, that you sent us a couple of weeks ago.
You got it.
The 11 something.
It is, goodness, it goes right off. It'll come back to me in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I can dig it out. I've got it all.
The 11s. Yeah, the 11s. They focus just on the game itself and the history behind it. Yeah, that's it. But so that's a fantastic book. Yeah, the 3 lines on a shirt. It's a huge book. So there's a lot of people, as you see, on Twitter and all social media, are massive fans of football shirts and some iconic shirts in there. Obviously, you've got the 1966, but you've got the classic Admiral one. The late 70s, early 80s as well. Some cracking, picture book, cracking book.
You've got the Vision. Shirty, the Admiral book as well. While we're talking about England, that's come out not long ago, hasn't it?
Yeah, get Shirty.
That's the one.
That's it. Yeah, that came out via Conquer Editions. Yeah, which basically captures about Admiral, the fall and the rise of Admiral as well.
Yeah, and again quite a shirt that divided the country, didn't it, Admiral? Whereas, Reevy brought it into England, and there was a lot of, at the time, financial situations, scenarios. Lots of people didn't like the Admiral kit, but it's almost, because it's not there any longer, It's almost become iconic, hasn't it? The Admiral kit. You know, I mean, you wore them that weren't the best to wear as well, but they have somehow become so iconic. And
it's strange, isn't it? It's weird how something's more popular now than it probably was then.
I think it's like when someone dies, isn't it? They're so much more popular. And I think with the Admiral kit, I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, we all like to be remembered, don't we? But they were a small Midlands underwear firm. They were when they changed football forever when they won the contract. They were England's kit supplier, and they just had bold designs and branding. It was quite controversial at the time, but they did pioneer today's like multi-billion-pound sportswear industry, because the shirts you see now, I think you've got all shapes and colours and everything, haven't you? So it's some horrendous. Really horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah, they tend to put a shirt with what will go with a pair of jeans on these days, whereas, back in the day it was about football shirts and they went a little bit... Was the Coventry kit, was that the chocolate kit and the sky
chocolate
blue?
Brown strip.
That was Admiral as well, wasn't it? The Man United. So many iconic shirts, Admiral done, as you say, done an awful lot for English football shirts, and I don't know whether they ventured and went further into Europe and further afield. I don't know, but I think that's a great book for if you're a collector of football. In fact, the only shirt that I've got, I'm in no way, shape or form am I a collector of football shirts, but I wanted Gunter Netzer shirt. I mean, it isn't a match worn Gunter Netzer Borussia Mönchengladbach 1973 shirt, but it is a shirt that I ordered. I think it might have been from Tufts, because there are different football companies or companies that flog your football shirts. So well done, and that sounds like a fantastic read if you love your football shirts.
Excellent. I think you could squeeze into it as well, Paul.
I probably could, to be fair. I'm not much above my old fighting weight.
Brilliant. Excellent. So, a couple of great books there, around shirt books are really, really popular, shirts in general. So, great ones. If I mentioned probably a couple of the November releases, I think we might have touched on this in the last podcast. Actually, I think it was released back end of October. It was the Match of the Century by Matt Clough. Yeah, so England-Hungary and the game that changed
25th of November.
Forever. Yeah, that's it. So great book, that one, and one that sticks out for this year. It was very much of that. Yeah, it was an iconic game for a number of reasons. It was West versus East, capitalism versus communism, the masters versus the students, and iconic, wasn't it? And a great book. So that was up by History Press, one that I really enjoyed that came out this year.
And it was only the fact that Stalin died that they were able to get the game on, wasn't they?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I mean, a phenomenal. On the podcast this week, Alan was talking about that game and going back to the drawing boards. He said, because that's what we did when we got absolutely smashed 6-3 by Hungary, 25th of November 1953. We went back to the drawing boards, but Alan put it so eloquently. The people that went back to the drawing boards wasn't very good at drawing. And I think, and again, what we have to say is the influence of that iconic game was the great Jimmy Hogan that taught more or less the whole of Europe how to play football. Sadly and unfortunately, the English didn't listen to him, and as a consequence, we haven't done very well, and they have.
They just excelled, didn't they, and took it away from us, and the rest is history, as they say.
Absolutely.
So, excellent book, that particular one. I've got a whole host of books I can. So if you want to pick up any of you I've got there, but I'll keep cracking on.
And you talk. I do just want to mention Denied Promotion by a Tree by Les Scott. I think we probably mentioned that in the last podcast.
Yes, I remember you mentioned that,
I'm going to, I shall be buying that book. I haven't got it as yet. But I think it's just football facts. And, It was the fact that the 18 were denied, and I'm just dying to know what team were denied promotion by a tree and how. But I'm sure in this book by Les Scott, when I buy it, I'll read it and I'll find out. And that's the thing about books, whether they're factual, history, etc., etc. It's all about learning about the game of football. So I'm going to shut up for a bit and let you crack on with some wonderful titles that you've got there.
That sounds a cracking storyline, doesn't it?
It does.
A book that came out in November, sent to me by HarperCollins, that do a range of books, not just football, but across all areas, fiction, non-fiction. They released the Mark Noble's book, The Bowling Boy.
Okay.
So, and I'm glad it was released actually when he finished his career as well. Football books are always better when they finish playing football. It's a much better read. So, but yeah, he's a classic one club man, isn't he? So he joins. He was born and raised in Canning Town in the area, and he joined the youth squad in the year, I think it was 2000. Made his senior team debut at 17. And made more than 500 appearances for his boyhood club, all under one belt. And it's just a look back on his remarkable career, really. So he's a genuine ambassador, a local legend. So it's a really good story. Must read for obviously West Ham fans. But it's great. There's not many like that, is there? Mr. West Ham, isn't he? He's one club man. We used to have them, didn't we, many, many years ago. And probably Mark Noble was arguably one of the latter ones. I'm sure there's ones that will jump out, but yeah, he's one of them. So, but that came out.
I think at the top level, which West Ham are at the top level, Premier League.
Yeah.
I think it's so much more difficult to be that player that stays and plays 500 games for one club. I think in the lower reaches, it's easier because you do get these club legends that, you know, look at where they are in the food chain and the pecking order and think, well, do you know what? I might as well stay here because I'm a legend, and if I move up, it ain't going to happen. So I think it is a lot easier to do it at the lower reaches, but at the top level, I think Mark is the last bastion of that loyalty football player, and I don't think at the top level, apart from when you're at the very top, like a Ryan Giggs or a Paul Scholes, etc., and they'll say, well, why didn't they move? Because they never needed to. They're at the top with Manchester United. So if you get to the top, at the top level, it's easier. But for most football clubs at the top level, I think it's very difficult. And usually they're there for a couple of 3 seasons, move on. Where in the 70s, we had players that stayed at football clubs forever and a day.
Yeah, absolutely. There wasn't the influx of players from all parts of the world as well, was there, as there is now.
And we only played with 11 men and a substitute.
Yes, he did have, what is it now, 5 subs?
5 subs.
I lose track now. Yeah,
I mean, you can probably have about 10, but 5 can come on at any given game.
Yeah,
crazy.
But I didn't realise actually you could have an extra one in extra time. I'm sure that happened in one of the games of the World Cup.
Yeah, I don't know how they work it out now. They get concussion subs as well. Subs have lost me.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. It's always changing. That's Mark Noble's book. So it came out last month. A shout out for a couple of others who came in November. Martin O'Neill released his book on days like this. So his life in football. So I've not read it myself, but what a career he had. Obviously at Nottingham Forest springs to mind. Obviously my club, and under the Cloughy days, didn't always see eye to eye then too, but he massively respected Cloughy, and obviously that influenced him in his own managerial career with Leicester, where I think he won the League Cup twice, I think it was. And then obviously he had times, we had a brief spell at Forest, as well as up the other side of the board at Celtic, and then at international level as well.
And Villa as well.
And Villa, yes, of course, Villa. Yeah, absolutely. So that came out last month. So also one that's has arrived recently to me is a book called When the Circus Leaves Town. This has come out via Pitch, and basically it says what happens when football leaves home. So it's a book about basically when it explores basically the impacts it has when clubs basically move home, they leave. So, for example, Roker Park up in Sunderland, Middlesbrough, and it talks about how the area has changed and why that move happens. But it's really fascinating because it interviews like the club officials, some of the developers, politicians, fans, etc., to understand the reasons behind. But it's really good because it covers lots of ones you'll know about. So you think like Manchester City, Moss Side, what an area that was. I remember going there once and I couldn't wait to get away. But anyway, but now you look at it, the Etihad, you couldn't get more chalk and cheese, could you really? From one ground to the other. And but yeah, so then it also talks about the clubs, Derby County, when you think of the baseball grounds out at Pride Park, very similar Leicester, Filbert Street to the King Power, and also Coventry is another one that springs out. Highfield Road. I don't know if you ever went there. It certainly had character. It wasn't. It was, wasn't it? So
great.
And then out the Rico, and I've been to the Rico. It's an incredible Rico. I've been there because you've got the casino, and it's just amazing. But it's nothing like Highfield Road.
But I think if we go back to the original 1923. When football started in the 1800s and they were starting to develop grounds because they'd start at a football ground. For instance, my team were Small Heath Alliance back then. We played in Ladypool Road. We played in Arthur Street. And then I suppose the most famous of the old Small Heath Alliance grounds was one that we had in Munt Street. And then in 1906, they moved to, we went to St Andrews, which is now in Garrison Lane.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what had happened, they then built these bigger grounds because football was developing, but it was always in a kind of housing estate, wasn't it? It was in a place because of the transportation in those days. Fans couldn't or didn't have cars, so you build the grounds in a real hub area of your big cities. Now, roll it on 100 years, they're moving out of town, aren't they? They're moving to places further out because of the car, etc., and the transportation network. They want to get it out of them areas. And I think that'd be a great book because it would then tell the story about how them areas almost have died because the football ground isn't within the hub of their community.
It's funny you should say that because there's great pictures of the Victoria Ground, Stoke. Yeah. So you remember the Victoria Grounds, and it's got a picture of it, the way it was and the way it is now. It is literally a housing estate now. It's completely changed. It's gone the other way, and there's a plaque on one of the houses where it says that this used to be the home of Stoke City FC. Yeah. So it's completely different, and that's gone out of town, hasn't it? It's on that big hill, isn't it? Where it's the coldest ground in the world, pretty much, isn't it? So, but yeah, it's fascinating. And this book was great stories, and it's like reminiscing about those. Pretty different. On the way football's evolved, isn't it? And it's the way fans evolved, and it's all the social impact. A bit like we were talking about in 1923. But football grounds, that's the home, isn't it? Yeah. And it's I'd hate to think I'm a Forest fan, City Ground, and we've been rumoured. I remember a good 10 years ago about moving out of town. I'm so glad we've never done it. I'm happy with having our grounds where it is, and they're talking about knocking down the main stand. It is awful, don't get me wrong, it's awful. The toilets are awful, everything about it is awful, but it's our awful. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. That's just, I don't know how else you can put it. So it's part of the history. But it is, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's what you should memories, isn't it? Your first time you went to the ground, that feeling. And you still have it now. When you go, I still have it, it still feels the first time I go in. it's that incredible feeling. But this book, yeah, it really brings it to life. It's certainly one of our picks of 2022. And lo and behold, it's Pitch Again that managed to land this particular one. And the writer is David Proudlove. So yeah, really recommend that. When the Circus Leaves Town. And I like that title as well, actually. Just sums it up quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great title.
Absolutely.
I've watched a few circuses at St Andrews over the years.
Excellent. And another book that has been come to me recently. This is a guy that sent me a number of books, which is great. Phil Brennan, his name is. But this is called Proper Football. And basically, it's a unique collection of photographs covering the real world of football. So the subtitle is Proper Football Clubs, Proper Football Grounds, Proper Football Fans. So it's basically non-league football, etc. And it just captures the imagery of what it is like playing that's further down the pyramid, and where there's lots of people love the game as I do as well. I cover, obviously. Sorry, I support my club, and we're in the Premier League now. But there's a certain romantic side of non-football league, and these pictures in here, some of the turnstiles, etc. They're just it's just brilliant. So it is, as it says, proper football. So yeah, great book. It covers a number of clubs from Lowestoft Town. I think it covers the Midlands area as well. There's a number of clubs in this. Cracking book for almost like for ground hoppers. You get ground hoppers that love to go to different grounds across the UK. So yeah, that's called Proper Football.
Especially that non-league circuit, the ground hoppers are rife in that.
Yeah.
You'll never meet more nutters at non-league football than you do anywhere in any other walk of life. It almost non-league football almost attracts the nutcase, don't it?
Yeah.
The weirdo.
There's some characters, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But we love them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they're fantastic. I've read a couple of the books by some of those ground hoppers, and they're fantastic reads.
They're just proper anoraks, aren't they?
I love it. They absolutely love it.
Anoraks.
I'm not into train. Yeah, the knowledge, exactly. I'm not into for train spotting, for example.
Yeah,
but I always compare it to that.
100%.
They love train spotting, and I've got nothing against you. If that's your passion, that's your passion. 100%. But there was a book, actually, that's really good timing. There's one that I've read recently called From #United to Wembley by a guy called Phil Hearn. It's basically, if you love non-league, it's travel, it's people watching, and he's just... I don't know why he quite picked it, but he started watching #United versus Chipston in the FA Trophy first, and he just decided to follow the winners of that game, and then follow the winners of that game, and the winners of that game all the way to Wembley. So quite a unique way. He's just documented his journey along the way, and some of the characters, and some of the oddballs you do see. So he talks about. He met a drugs lord or something on a train, gangsters on a train, an ex-drug dealer in Stockport. Fascinating people he comes across along the way, sort of thing. But obviously, running through that is just a love of football and a love of seeing the grassroots, the classic grassroots.
Absolutely.
So, lovely ball.
What else you got, mate?
One I think you featured recently, I'm pretty sure he did a podcast, is by Paul Whittle, Before the Premier League.
Yep, a history of Football League last decade. Brilliant book. Yeah. Fantastic little book. So, and I love the way it's written, and I love some of the facts inside the book as well. Yeah, and just facts like top goal scorers from those years in all the divisions as well. Division 1, 2 and 3, and like record wins and what have you. So just lovely facts, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
It's just a great capture of
and interviews as well. Paul's done a number of interviews with all the players. It's a real good read. He's a good lad, and he has his presence on social media, and he does his own podcast as well. So Yeah, well
Does
done.
he?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Paul does, yeah. Yeah, so, I want to do a bit more linking up with Paul in 2023. He's got some real good stuff out there, and in his podcast they talk about football from all over, not just the 70s, go back before that, and really good stuff. So
excellent.
Paul,
Well, shout out to his website then. I know it's called the 1888letter.com.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know because I follow him on Twitter, so he shares some really interesting stuff. So I was looking at his website. I must have missed that when he does podcasts, so I'll have to dig into that as well then. So, but that's his book, before the Premier League. So it just looks at all the major developments you've seen in English football from, I think it goes from 1950s up to obviously the early 1990s. And again, how it's changed, the playing conditions, wages, and the influence of all the things that we've talked about, sponsorship, television, and everything that goes with it.
Absolutely.
The good and the worse.
I'm going to give another shout out to a podcast that I've done quite recently. Alchemy, the story of Browne Clough and Peter Taylor at Hartlepool United with Christopher Hull writing it. A great book. Not only does it talk about Clough and Taylor's time there at Hartlepool's, but it gives you a real good history and insight as to what Hartlepool was like back in those days. So a real good read there. Well done, Christopher Hull.
Yeah, fantastic book. Out from the History Press, isn't it? So,
yes, it is.
Yeah, it's one of again. When I mentioned that the countdown to Christmas, it's one I've featured on the football books of the year. So great. There's lots of great Browne Clough books out there, and it's a nice one to add to the collection.
Bloody Southerners.
Yeah,
that's another one that was you'd put up on your Twitter and Facebook pages not long ago.
Yeah, that's it. Based on his time at Brighton, also Peter Taylor. So again, very different outcome there and story.
Yeah,
compared to Hartlepool's, but I love the Hartlepool story because it gave great link to. You think of what a footballer he was. And then his tragic, the career-ending knee injury.
Yeah.
And then that gap in between. I saw someone on Twitter recently. He wrote a letter to someone that someone had said, "Sorry to hear about your injury." He writes him a letter. He says, "Thank you for your condolences and messages and wishes. I don't know what I'm going to do next yet." Yeah. You just think about he literally didn't know what he was doing.
No, he hadn't got a clue. No, and it took him 12 months to get over that injury. They knew that he wasn't going to, but they, because Cloughie was what Cloughie was, even back then, they said, "Come on, Browne, you can get back." And he did play 2 more games for
Sunderland, was it?
He started at Middlesbrough, his home team, and then went to Sunderland, of course, and it was the Boxing Day 62, wasn't it? But he did play 2 more games. He played against Leeds United, and his last game was against Aston Villa.
Right, okay.
And the game that he scored against Leeds United, I think it was the Leeds United game he scored, was his only goal that he scored in the top level. But he played against Billy Bremner that day. Billy played that day, which just shows you, how long Billy Bremner was playing football and what a legend Billy was. Literally again going back to summer of '63, which was round those times. Yeah, Browne Howard Club. Yeah, Alchemy, Christopher Hull, great. Yeah, and Bloody Southerners, another great book about Browne, and of course many books about Browne and Peter Taylor's time at Nottingham Forest and Derby County as well. So, you can get all the books on the times of Browne Clough's years at the various football clubs, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and there's one, because we were talking about Browne Clough, there's definitely one I have to stick out. It's one of my favourite all-time. When I did I shared about the top 20 favourite books ever, is the book he Provided You Don't Kiss Me.
Yes.
Which is just a stunning book.
Was that Duncan Hamilton that wrote that book?
Yeah, that's it. 20 years with Brian Clough.
Yeah.
It's just a brilliant read. There's one particular, it's the chapter about when his alcoholism takes over, and it's just, I just even think about it now, it's just a brilliantly written. It's just, really gives you an insight of just how it affected him, etc. So,
and Jonathan Wilson's wrote a good book about Brian Clough.
It is.
Nobody Says Thank You.
Yeah, great title, lovely cover as well.
Yeah,
great writer, and he is, Jonathan. Yeah, that's the number one. Sticks out. Like I said,
this summer, Instacart presents famous summer flavors coming to your front door, or pool, or hotel.
Your grocery delivery has arrived, sir.
That was faster than room service.
No violins in the lobby.
Oh, seriously? Anyway, sit back, relax, and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Starring your favorite snacks, drinks, and more. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Rated H for hungry audiences. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
There's plenty of Clough books out there.
Yeah.
There's even the one that was done recently, again, very different, but it was the Take Care, Love Brian, sorry, I might have mistaken the title.
It was about the lads that went stay with Brian, wasn't there? Yeah.
That's it, he took them on a brilliant book, book that is. Yeah, romantic kind of book, real feel good, and just shows the compassionate side of Brian. Be good, love Brian, that's it, he's just come back to me.
Yeah.
It's like him growing up with Brian Clough, and he took them under his wing, these 2 young lads. I think he was just 13 years old at the time, and Clough just took him and his older brother Aaron, took him in on a whim, and looked after and brought him up. But brilliant story. So again, it just demonstrates the different things about Brian Clough. But we could talk about Brian Clough. I could easily talk about Brian Clough for another hour.
I think any football fan of a certain age could talk about Brian Clough forever and a day, because Cloughie was the greatest manager that England never had. You could argue. I mean, Alan Hudson always says about Brian, he says he was an absolute crackpot.
Absolutely.
He had a lot to do with Tony Waddington in those days as well. I mean, Waddington used to water the pitch for Uddy, and then Cloughie, when he was, Forest manager playing in Europe, he many a time watered the pitch against foreign opposition. They were really good friends, Tony Waddington and Brian Clough. But very different characters, but both great managers.
Absolutely, and he's a very interesting character, Brian Clough. You can tell by reading lots of things. There's plenty of people out there who will not say nice things about Brian Clough, but that was just the way he was.
Terry Curran would always say great things about Brian. He loved Brian. But, not a great lover of Peter Taylor, I've got to say, but he did love Brian Clough, and some funny stories that Terry talks and tells about Brian Clough and Peter Taylor and his time at Nottingham Forest.
Excellent. Next book I've got here, again out of our pitch, it was a book that was released fairly recently called The Roaring Red Front, and it's about the world's top left wing football clubs. So it talks about like the likes of, I think about St. Pauli in Germany.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating look just at because the author travelled the globe to experience these clubs that's featured in this book, to tell you how they grew and how the different fan base. You've got St. Pauli, you've got Bohemians, and then you've got clubs like over here like Dulwich Hamlet and how they started. Really fascinating book. Boca Juniors as well, and it's just how they grew and how they've how they've evolved, really. It's just a different side. It's off the pitch, really. It's about how supporters have got involved in these clubs. So it's a fascinating insight. So clubs are very interlined, and it's more than just a football club.
I think football clubs are more than just a football club. They're a part of the community, aren't they?
Yeah.
I just did reference Terry. His book this year, Give Me the Ball, a great title, given to him by an absolute genius.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great read. Love his both his books and his first one as well, Terry's.
Yeah, absolutely. His next one's called Steady Away, by the way. He hasn't written it yet, but I'll say to him, your next time is Steady Away. When we open up the podcast, how you going, T? Steady away. He always says that. steady away. And then, of course, when Terry played football, he would just always say, just give me the ball, give me the ball. Give me the ball. And players like Terry Curran, that's what they demanded. They demanded the ball. They didn't fear. It's so great, read Terry Curran, give me the ball.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Tremendous anecdotes in that book. So lots of the major characters. I know I love listening to the podcast every week. Some of the characters he's got involved is remarkable, isn't it? He talks about, he reveals that he's explosive but close relationship with Jack Charlton as well.
Yeah. Him and Jack. I mean, they didn't see eye to eye. I mean, he loved the bloke, but it's again Jack's philosophy in football. He didn't like the way that Jack played, but they'd come on, T, let's go and have a Guinness. I think, of course, the Guinness would be for Jack, but because Terry would only drink Coke.
He doesn't drink, does he?
No, don't drink.
Yeah,
no,
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but again, I mean, Matt Letizia, he's never drunk a pint of lager.
Has he not? Right, okay.
No.
I didn't know that.
Must be something to do with Southampton strikers. But no. Yeah. So I did a podcast with Matt, and he was telling me he'd never... I mean, this was a few years ago, mind.
Yeah,
but up to that time, he'd never, ever drunk a pint of lager. Just didn't like it.
Yeah. You shouldn't be surprised. There's plenty of people that don't drink, isn't there? But
absolutely.
I don't know what it is, but in football terms, I don't know, there's a certain from a certain time, you seem to think there must have been a drink. They must have lost a drink, but not everyone did they? No. So, but there you go. If I can mention another one then, so one that's they've produced a number of books this year, Morgan Lawrence Publishing Services. This is I Get Knocked Down, but I'll get up again. It's about Danny Wilson.
Okay, yeah.
So his career, he played non-league football. He played for his hometown Wigan Athletic. But he's more, I suppose, he had a successful playing career. He played for various clubs, again, Nottingham Forest, Sheffield Wednesday, and then he joined Barnsley as a player coach, and he managed them, and he took them to Premier League for the first time in their history.
Yeah.
So, he had a 25 years of managerial career. I think over 1,000 games he managed, so it's really impressive.
Did Fjortoft play for him in them days? He did, didn't he, Barnsley?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did, yeah.
Swindon? I'm getting a bit mixed up.
He managed Swindon as well. He managed Swindon. Yeah,
I'd have to have a look at that, but I do remember Barnsley vaguely up there, and Danny Wilson, one of those unsung heroes. You go, I remember Danny Wilson. All right, what did he do?
Yeah,
well, I don't know, but I do. He was a legend, isn't he, Danny? He's just one of them players in football that you do remember. But sounds like
a proper nice bloke he comes across as well. He's he's one of these true football men, isn't he? He's one of them. So I think everyone knows him, and Barnsley sticks out because, of course, he took them to the Premier League, which is incredible when you think about it now. But he was at Sheffield Wednesday, Bristol City, NK Dons, Hartlepool again. So and he actually did Sheffield United as well. So he did both sides of the Steel City. But it's a good read, and he talks about when he works with Paolo Di Canio as well, which is quite an interesting part. And also I do remember he turned Harry Maguire as well. From I think he was originally a midfielder into a defender. So
Okay.
yeah, so he was involved in that. So yeah, well, Harry's career. So he's had a fairly good World Cup, hasn't he? But sadly, it needs to end as it should have. But anyway, there you go.
Yeah, he's never a midfield player. It was a good decision to put Slabhead to centre half.
Yes, exactly. The next book is Richard Crooks. So I can't recall if we did mention it in the last one, but if we did, no problem, we'll mention it again. But it was What Was Football Like in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So his latest instalment. So he's in the 60s and 70s, which you've got to read.
Yes.
The 80s. And now, the 1990s, which is arguably quite a remarkable decade for so many different reasons. When you think about it, and again, it reminds you of, I forget, the things like the Taylor Report, obviously, that came on the back of Hillsborough. Then you've got the Bosman ruling. And then, of course, obviously the way football changed completely with Murdoch and Sky. And but there is, what it does remind you as well, there was a downside, wasn't it? Football was not exactly pretty to many people, and it had to have a bit of a face. But it does just demonstrate how it's just gone too far. It's gone too far the other way. There's.
I think it depends on the way that you look at football, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
We're told that in the 80s it was terrible and hooliganism, but that wasn't really strictly true. Okay, there was quite a bit of hooliganism that was, rearing its head in the 70s, got through to the 80s. I mean, 70s was just as violent, really, as what the 80s were. And then,
you're right. Yeah.
Then, of course, we had our successes in Europe towards the end of the 70s and the early 80s. So there wasn't an awful lot that needed to be fixed. I mean, 85 when Everton won the Cup Winners' Cup. I mean, Goodison Park was absolutely rocking me. I think what happened, which fundamentally changed the fabric of football in the 80s, and the narrative is about the hooligans, etc. But Europe's always had a problem in football with hooligans, not just us in England.
Yeah.
But when they banned us and Everton then couldn't go and play in the European Cup, that had a massive impact. And I think that had more of an impact in the way that football was going rather than the hooligans, because they were about for a long, long time, but it was just not playing in Europe. I think from being kings of Europe to not being able to play in Europe, I think had a massive effect on English football and British football.
And I think you can link into that. There's a subtle link of the growth of media as well. So it was blown. So any kind of incident was blown out of proportion. So it definitely affected the image, which comes across when you look at the 90s. So the image was there. It wasn't necessarily, like you said, that it had its dark side, but it wasn't that bad. But there was an image, wasn't there? And the media certainly captured anything that was slightly wrong. They were on it. And it created
that's what the media like to do, don't they? They like to jump on the back, and blow it up and then slag it off. You'll get
Harry Kane.
Well, I mean, you look at Jude Bellingham. I mean, I've said on podcast, Jude Bellingham's got better PR than COVID. That's all you ever heard. But it's the narrative that the media drive through, and you go, do you know what? That just is not true. But if you keep saying things enough about certain things, what the media have done through the ages, again, like with Leeds United, dirty Leeds, if you keep saying it enough, it sticks. And the media, have done a lot of damage to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm afraid to say, when you think of Hillsborough, the media, the Sun, that infamous headline, 100%. And that's linked. And there's nothing to do with hooligans, nothing at all. And that's kind of carried a narrative, and it's carried a stigma. That's carried on for so long, but I know they just love to latch onto things, don't they? I mentioned Harry Kane. He missed that penalty. It's awful, but you forget all the penalties you scored to get there and etc. Yeah. So get off his back. I don't know. So, but there you go. Maybe a different manager would have been a different outcome anyway. But there you go.
Absolutely, he'd play the better players, wouldn't he? Our most creative players wouldn't be sitting on the bench. But, you know, our most creative players were sitting on the bench because we got a manager who fears fear. I like that that meme or whatever they call them on social media. Did you see it with Father Christmas and the sleigh smashed on the?
No.
Have you not seen it? It's Father
No,
Christmas.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, there's a sleigh and Father Christmas is underneath it, and the caption is, "All I was doing is minding my own bleeding business when they fucking football at me."
Oh, brilliant!
And I were cracking up with that. But again, that's the English side. That's the English mentality. The way that we can look at ourselves, laugh at ourselves.
Of course.
But,
not take it too personal of things, can I? I do remember the commentator actually on that game. I didn't really catch on to it. Someone said after he referred to. He made a comparison to Chris Waddle or something. It just seemed like the wrong timing completely because Chris Waddle's obviously ballooned over the bar, didn't he, in 1990? Yeah, and then he made a reference to that, which was not exactly
SRBMedia.
Yeah, so next up, I got back to Morgan Lawrence Publishing Services. They released a book recently as well about Tony Daly.
Oh, yes.
And it's got a foreword by Ron Atkinson and Steve Bull. It's called The Daily Record, nicely titled. Famously, for me anyway, Aston Villa, he played, and Ron Atkinson's a sub-quote is, but it might sound boring, but Tony Daly is what you call a professional. He was easy to work with. So it's about his career, really. He was capped 7 times for England under Graham Taylor, who features heavily throughout his career, because he linked it with Taylor again when he left Villa for Wolverhampton Wanderers, which was then a club record fee of around 1.25 million in 1994, which seems pittance now, really. That's it. And he was signed again by Graham Taylor, yet again in 4 years later when he was at Watford, a Watford manager. So that's Tony Daly. It looks, really great read. And again, that's from Morgan Lawrence. That's come out. So
fantastic.
Just recently. Linking back to, we just touched about England, didn't we, and the World Cup, but there's a book that came out called Something in the Water, and this is the story of England's football talent hotbeds by Callum Murray. It came out by Pitch, and it basically explores the inner workings of England's football talent hotbed, investigating how they created elite footballers. So places like Huyton, a town of just 33,000 people, it's produced the likes of Steven Gerrard, Peter Reid, Joey Barton, Tony Hibbert, etc. I mean, it also concentrates on areas in London where Jadon Sancho, Sahar, Gomez, and a few others are coming from. So it touches on the England team that played the under-17s World Cup, won it under Steve Cooper, the current Forest manager. When you had the Phil Foden playing in that, and I think there was a montage a little bit about that. About Phil Foden and that time when they won it in under-17s in 2017. But it's basically, about how football has grown in certain areas. So South London State, and it's quite interesting, how particular areas of England have been hotbeds for talent. So it's really quite interesting. Fascinating story there. One also from Pitch is it's called From Beauty to Duty.
Yeah,
Uruguay. That's it. The football and history of Uruguay, 1878 to 1917 by Martin de Cruz. So, fabulous looking book. And it's a curious case, isn't it, in world football, how they dominated, really. Like early Olympic, the World Cup, of course, the first, 1930 and 34, or was it 38?
1930.
30 years.
Uruguay won the first World Cup, didn't they, in their own backyard? Then won it in 50, again in Brazil's backyard. Before that, Italy won the first back-to-back 34 and 38, and then we had the war.
That's it. Yeah, of course. That's it. No, but it's wonderful. It's amazing how a little story it's basically a story about a little country that's made it big.
Yeah, it is.
For such a small area that. When English, the football went from away from England, it was just picked up by Uruguay, and it's just a curious case, and it just talks about the history of how it grew Uruguayan football, and it maps out a journey from which was pretty much an exclusive pastime of the British.
Yeah.
But it became a national passion for Uruguay.
Yeah.
And it just brings to life the teams, the players, and some of the personalities that was involved in that. So, and it's timely because it relates to how Uruguay's national story now. Because they've had some moments, haven't they, over the years? Recently,
they've done really well over the years, Uruguay, haven't they?
Yeah. Absolutely. But obviously it's such a hotbed, isn't it?
Yeah.
As we all know, of football in that area of the world, with Brazil and, of course, Argentina now.
But isn't it mad how some nations in South America have been very successful, and then other nations that you could argue a lot bigger that haven't been?
Yeah.
And, it is mad because whenever you talk about Uruguay, you get, won the World Cup twice.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And for a small country, I don't think they're much bigger than Croatia, are they? Uruguay. I don't know without looking at the facts, but I think they really are a tiny nation. I think the smallest nation to ever win the World Cup. But that looks like a fantastic read. Phenomenal. Uruguay. Spell it.
Yeah. And keeping up with the World Cup, keeping up with the World Cup theme. There was a book also came out called "The Making of the FIFA World Cup," and it captures 75 of the most memorable moments and shocking moments as well in the history of football's greatest tournaments. So obviously, this was released before the start of the World Cup. Again, it's come out through Pitch, written by Jack Davies, and it picks out all the ones that you know about. So the infamous Maradona. Zidane's headbutts, etc. But also things like another ones like from the '66. You got Pickles the dog. Did he nick the dog? He nicked the World Cup, if I remember. What did he?
He found it, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, he found it. Sorry, that's it. He found it, of course. So, and then and then talks about.
The dog talks about it.
Yeah, the dog talks about it. It's a cracking interview. That would be a bestseller, wouldn't it? I think across everything.
I was walking down the street, I was cocking my leg up, and someone was going, "Oh, bloody hell, there's a Jules Rimet." Well done, Pickles. You're better than Skippy.
But it's lovely little stories like that. But it also covers like the miracle of Bern and the arrival of Pelé, and also there's a nice little touch about Grincha. Another great, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that ain't his name, is it? But I mean, that's his nickname, Grincha.
That's it.
Little bird. And he got that nickname because he used to like to shoot little birds, didn't he? Wrens, he'd bang. That was one of his favourite pastimes.
His biography is one of the best reads. Really, really good read. What a life he had.
Oh, what a life.
Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. He's had more lives. He's had more stories in his life than, I can just, remarkable. Absolutely.
He lost his virginity shagging a goat, didn't he?
I remember that. Yeah.
And
incredible.
And the family, they were, not them, but going back generations. They were cannibals, weren't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I remember reading it, and the author was saying it's quite remarkable that they survived because they kept eating each other. You're thinking, oh God,
crazy!
What a play! I mean, there is a school of thought in Brazil that Grinch is the greatest Brazilian ever. I mean, that's how good he was. Because when Pelé was injured in '62, it was pretty much Garrincha that took on the world and won the World Cup for Brazil.
That's it.
So and again, a name that gets forgotten and a name that's too good to be forgotten.
Yeah, and arguably it's because of how great Pelé was, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Either side of that, that's where he just gets lost in the story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a great book. And again, it's greatly timed the World Cup, bringing to life some of those stories. A couple of other books then. There's one that came out, again, the History Press. This is about how Britain brought football to the world. So and it's basically a trip around how football took a journey to other parts of the world. So how it's it went from a pastime in Britain to other areas of the world. So it's similar ways, a bit like the origin stories. There was a book that was written by Chriis, about how football was taken, football pioneers. But yeah, it's a book about football, but it's a book about the countries of the world, etc. It's all about shared passion and humanity, and basically how Britain brought football to the world. So
that's what I like about books, not just about the football, but about the wider issues and the country and what happened, and looking at the full picture rather than the little bit of the picture that we like to know about. But of course, we like to know where it come from as well. So fantastic.
No, that's a good point. I echo that as well. I do love the books that give it. It gives it more of a meaning to it, don't it? And this football has a lot of meaning, doesn't it? To it, and it's linked in whatever way you like or not. It's linked to politics as well. There's plenty of books that write about that. You could talk about Qatar as well and all the linkages around there. So it's always going to be linked one way or another. And a couple of other books I want to give you a shout out is a book called Murphy's Mission. It's about Colin Murphy, football adventures from Sintel back to Saigon. Right. So basically, Lincoln City fans will be very familiar with him, but it's this life story of a journeyman football manager, legend, and a self-styled bard of the beautiful game. Right. His nickname was Murph, so described by John Inverdale as one of my favourite people in sport ever. Murph was called the saviour at Lincoln City, young sung hero at Hull City, and the madman at Southend United. And he had, as a national coach of Vietnam, he was hero worshipped by nations. So fantastic character. I haven't read the book, and I don't know how familiar you are with him, but it's got extracts from his Mad programme notes and original interviews with former colleagues, including Roy Hodgson, David Pleat, Howard Wilkinson. But he's very much loved character. So it's a really interesting looking book. A fascinating individual.
And Lincoln was the first team to have City added to the name.
Was it really?
Lincoln.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Excellent. But yeah, it's an anecdote to the excess of the Premier League and real football fans. Yeah, I would love the story of just hard graft and survival against the odds. So that's recently come to me. It's written by a lady called Sally Mears. That's Murphy's Mission. I did a feature article on the website. You can take a look on there. And it gives you a bit more of an insight to that as well. And I suppose finally, just one that I featured recently is How Not to Run a Football Club. And this is the subtitle, Protests, Boycotts, Court Cases. It's the inside story of Blackpool FC.
Yes.
And it's a fascinating read. It's one of these. I saw a quote that probably sums it up quite well. It's probably one of these could be turned into a Netflix or a Prime series. Yeah. It's just a remarkable story.
The Oystons, wasn't it?
That's it. The Oystons. It's just incredible, and it's the inside story of that. How basically one family nearly ran a football club to its death.
Yeah.
But how the community brought it back, and just remarkable, really. It's a book again. It's come out through Pitch. It came out earlier this year, but I've included it as one of my favourites from this year. Fascinating.
A couple of books I'm going to give a mention to that I've done podcasts as well with this year. Leo Monaghan, They Shall Not Pass, his book.
Excellent.
We had a good old chat with Leo, who's a football journalist. Does a lot of writings, not just in his books, but
it does.
He does. He did a wonderful interview with Haaland in 442 magazine a couple of months ago. So Leo Monaghan, They Shall Not Pass. Book about centre halves, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was nominated one of the Sports Books Awards.
Yes, it was
2022. So Great writer. He also did Three Kings.
Yes, he did.
One of my favourite books. Busby, Shankly and Steen.
Yeah.
Great writer. And so is his dad, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Comes from good stock, and it come from the video, the DVD, didn't it? The documentary that Johnny Owen done, and Leo wrote the book. So we spoke about both of those books in the podcast. John Sperling, we caught up with John earlier this year for a chat about his fantastic book, Get It On. And his favourite record of those times as well. That's what it was called, Get It On. So the 70s. Anytime I see a 70s book, I get really excited about it.
And that's a great book. It's quite like an evocative. It's just wonderful. Yeah, it's funny and it's poignant and fascinating all at the same time. It's a great book.
It starts
some cracking tales.
Yeah, it starts off with the World Cup, doesn't it? With the ITV versus the BBC. And some fantastic tales about those days. John Sperling, Get It On. And Get It On, get it into your Christmas. I don't know, do people still have stockings these days? Or do we wrap everything up, but either hang it on the mantelpiece or stick it under the Christmas tree? And The Cup by Richard Whitehead, a phenomenal book, not just pictorial, but great stories as well in The Cup. And a lovely title. Could have called it the FA Cup, but, just called it The Cup and looks at various scenarios, managers, players, situations regarding the world's greatest cup competition, the FA Cup. So
great.
Yeah, well
great
done,
put together, isn't it? Great to put together. I think it's one of those books. There's some books that will stand the test of time, and that's one of those I do because the cup. They say it's lost its bit of romance. So I don't know how sometimes the media put a spin on that. Yeah, I don't think it has. I think still people love the FA Cup, and I certainly do. And I'd love to win the FA Cup. Well, more than quite a few things really to have that day. But that's a great book, and it just picks up the romance of the cup, doesn't it? And it'd be one of them. If FA Cup was to ever, I don't know, die a death, you look back at some of the stories that competition's created.
Magical.
Just magical, right the way through the pyramid. That's what makes English football brilliant, isn't it? It is right the way through the pyramid. You got the non-league shocks, your Sutton Uniteds, your Herefords, your Ronnie Radford's moments, right up to those great world finals and semi-finals. It's just got it all, hasn't it? The cup.
And most cups are just cups, but the FA Cup is a special cup. So they gave it a lid to keep the magic inside that FA Cup.
Love that. Love that.
And just some wonderful stories, accounts, etc. on the world's greatest cup competition by Richard Whitehead. All these podcasts, by the way, you can get on the usual way that you source podcasts. So I usually just trawl through Spotify and listen to various podcasts. I think it's a great app. There are many other apps like Acast, etc. And podcasts I find are so just a great way of listening to people talking about football and educating yourself, because sometimes I don't have enough time to read books, but when I'm working away, I'll just put on a podcast and listen. I do like Outside Right with Chris Lee. I think it's a great podcast.
Brilliant.
These football times. Gary Thacker, Out of the Blue. I done a podcast with Gary about his latest book, Out of the Blue, about Chelsea in 2012. FA Cup and European Cup Champions League, as it's called today. And I did a podcast with Gary. I think it was 2021. Beautiful bridesmaids dressed in orange. So fantastic.
And again this year, wasn't it?
Not
Argentina. Not quite as beautiful.
So beautiful.
Not quite the same. But not quite the leg there, probably. Sorry.
Yeah, when he goes up and takes a penalty, just give him a slap.
Yes.
There you go. What else you got for us, mate?
Well, I'll shout out. I do free recommended reads every month in my monthly newsletter, and the three that I put in this time was a book called Football Cliches. by a guy called Adam Murray. It's just a really funny book. There's lots of cliches that football commentators use, and it just captures all of them. It's just a great, fun book. Dr. Socrates by Andrew Dowdy. It's a biography, so footballer, philosopher, legend. It's a great book. Yeah, fantastic, that one, by Andrew Dowdy. And the last one, linking it back to Argentina, actually, is by Jonathan Wilson again. So, but it's called, I love the title, Angels with Dirty Faces.
Yes.
And it's the footballing history of Argentina. And you've got on the front of the book, it looks like it's Messi who's back to you. He's got his number 10 on the back.
Yeah, it does.
And it could be his moment, couldn't it, this weekend against France. So it's almost like I knew that was coming. So, that was one of my recommended reads. But it's a fantastic book, and it just, again, as I think we touched on earlier when we talked about Uruguay, Argentina is so in love with football, and it's everything, isn't it? As it is for many countries.
I think it's a great country as well. Steeped in tradition of football.
Yeah.
Fantastic cuisine.
Absolutely.
And wonderful wines as well. So, God bless Argentina. It's a battle of the wineries, isn't it? Messi and Mbappe, who's got the best wine. I'm just going to edge for Argentina. I prefer a Malbec than a Bordeaux, but there you go.
Yeah.
It's all personal taste. Paul Trevelyan, A Story of Sock Tags and Self-Belief. What a legend, Paul Trevelyan.
Yeah.
Still can't read and write, but keeps doing what he does and drawing. Unbelievable. What a character.
Yeah.
I think his podcast went on for about 2.5 hours, and I think it took me about 40 minutes. I think it was about 40 minutes, and he said, Gabby, do you want to say something? I said, nope, I'm happy letting you just rattle on, Paul. Carry on.
You don't mind, do you?
Oh, he's just a legend. Phenomenal. I mean, one of the game's great characters, Paul Trevelyan. And again, I think the word genius gets bandied around a lot.
Yeah.
Paul Trevelyan's a genius. Genius.
He definitely is.
Genius.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You recognise his work straight away, don't you?
Oh, phenomenal. And also, in the latest edition of Back Pass, there is a Paul Trevelyan with Diego Maradona as well. He just drew everyone.
Oh, is there? Oh, right. Okay. Excellent. Good stuff. Shall I mention, because you asked about books that's coming out in 2023, I'm just going to pick out a few that's coming out.
Yep.
With no surprise to you, it's a few coming out from Pitch. There is one, because I mentioned Diego Maradona, so there's a book coming out. There's been a few books on about Maradona, but this is Inside Diego, and it's an intimate portrait of arguably one of the greatest footballers of all time. But it's written by there's a few contributors, and one of them's one of Maradona's personal trainers from 1983 to 1994, and he worked with the Argentina national team and several other clubs. And then there's one of the other contributors is author of many books. He adds to it, and there's also a journalist, and so there's a combination of writers all writing about Maradona, but they've got some insight as well. So it's a unique look. So it looks a fascinating story. So, and I love the line it says here. It says it's brimming with incredible stories and anecdotes. It's an intensely personal roller coaster account of a flawed football genius. And you mentioned the word genius, and he was one of them, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
And many sides to his character, wasn't there? As many geniuses have. So
I just think that when you're Maradona, I think it's very difficult, and I think that the game is different now. But on the pitch, he had the shit kicked out of him for 90 minutes, and then when he was off the pitch, he also had it kicked out of him as well. Yeah. So I think that when people do judge Diego Maradona, walk a mile in his shoes, we can't do that. So I don't think we should judge him. Judge him on what he's done on a football pitch. And for me, Maradona was the greatest football player of my lifetime. I know there was players before like Di Stefano, like Puskás, and George Best really finished before I started getting into football. But I think we can never forget those players, John Charles and Duncan Edwards, and then we mentioned Garincha and so many great players of the past, Neil Franklin, another English player. So never ever forget those players, but you can only really judge players that you've seen. In my lifetime, the greatest was Diego Maradona. I think he was just different class. But
echo that absolutely.
But
a good segue to that is one you mentioned in that long list. His books comes out in February. Is biography of Duncan Edwards.
Yes.
So a lost genius, as it says as a subtitle. So it's called Eternal.
Wayne Barton, isn't it?
Yeah, Wayne Barton. He's the preeminent writer on anything Manchester United.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did one on George Best last year.
Yeah,
This last year or this year? Yeah, I forget. True Genius. But yeah, he's wrote one about Duncan Edwards. So it's a brand new biography. It takes a forensic look at his extraordinary life of an ordinary boy who was destined for greatness. It's authorised by the Edwards family. There's all new stories of Duncan's life and his childhood, as well as his footballing career, and it's brought to life. And if Wayne Barton's involved, it's going to be a crack read. He's got the man can't write a bad sentence. I think he's a brilliant writer. And we all know what happened, sadly, to the end of that short career at just 21. Yeah, we'll never know, will we?
And when in the podcast with John, and it's in John's book, when he first met Duncan Edwards, he's seen Duncan Edwards with eating an apple on a wall. It's just
right.
them moments of complete innocence. You know, and John was talking about Liam Whelan as well, because he come from the same part of Dublin as John. Slightly, away from John was Ormond Square, and he come from Cabra, Liam Whelan. But they connected whilst they were at Manchester United, and although we didn't really know the Babes, but when he first went over there, and then when he went back, the Babes were very prominent. And John also tells me about how he learned of Munich air disaster, and all this as well will be in that wonderful book about the great Duncan Edwards, one of the all-time great football players, and John Charles is another legend as well.
Yeah,
I suppose very similar to Duncan.
Absolutely.
We've had so many in the past, and as I say, it's great that writers still keep writing, and publishing houses keep publishing these books, and please read the books, because these are great stories from players that, again, I'm going to use that, too good to be forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll end on one that's coming out in 2023. It links quite well with the upcoming World Cup final, and it's called The Match, and it's a story of Italy versus Brazil at Spain 82.
Ooh, who's wrote that?
Yeah, it's written by Piero Cialini.
Okay.
So I'm guessing, he's born in Rome. So I don't really know that, because it says on the back the author. So he's born in Rome in 1970. He still lives there. In fact, he spent most of his life researching and reliving the Italy-Brazil match of 1982. So collecting stories, anecdotes, memorabilia, including the referee's whistle that was used that day, apparently. And he's written for various Italian newspapers, and he's written other books as well. But so it's a tale of one of the most iconic games in World Cup history. I guess if you're looking at
the most iconic games in World Cup history, taking away the final, because we always look at the World Cup final, don't we? And from whatever World Cup it was from 30 to now. But within those games of getting to the final, the group stages sometimes weren't the greatest of games. And I think in that tournament in particular, I think Italy had only scored one goal in qualification, but then they really put the foot on the gas when they played Brazil. And I think that Brazil team was one of the greatest not to win the World Cup. Of course, Italy went on and lifted the trophy. But that'll be a great book. I do a game of my life. I wouldn't mind talking to him about a game of my life, because that was a game of Paolo Rossi's life. And sadly, he passed away, didn't he? Last year, Paolo Rossi.
Yeah, he scored a hat trick, of course, in that game, didn't he?
Absolutely.
So I'll see what I can do, Paul. I'll speak to Picture Publisher and see if we can set someone up to, because that'd be great to listen to talk to the author then of that book. So but yeah, no, great iconic game. It was. So I would have only been 3 years old at the time, so I don't remember it entirely, but I've seen it since.
82, I was 18.
Were you? Right.
17 going on 18.
So we're both still young then.
Yes, I remember it very well. Very well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And it was in the Barcelona's game. It was in the Barcelona, but not the Camp Nou, was it? It was another ground.
I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you where the game was being played. But I remember watching the game as a kid and thinking, oh, my God, because I was hoping Brazil was going to win. You know, Brazil was, all of our teams, all of our second team, of course, England, we wanted England to win. England didn't lose a game in that tournament under Ron Greenwood. But we got knocked out, Yeah, but that's all right. But Brazil were the entertainers. Socrates, there, and Zico and Falcao, and they were Junior. They were just different class.
Wow.
But on that day, the Italians done a job on him, and Paolo Rossi was phenomenal, and he wrote his name in World Cup folklore. So, great read. Just want to give a couple of mentions to players that I've interviewed on our Legends of the 70s, and John McGovern had an autobiography out not long ago.
Love that, Have you read? John, I've met John a couple of times as well myself.
Yeah, have you read his book?
Yeah, from Bowness to Bernabeu.
That's the one,
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, a great lad. Steve Perryman, A Forever Spur. That is
great book.
Phenomenal. I mean, that's not a book, that's a work of art.
Yeah,
and I've done a podcast with Stevie. And there is another book out about the 1981 FA Cup final, which is the 100th, not the centenary, but the 100th. Because the centenary was 1972.
Yeah.
Because it started in 1872. But the 100th was 1981. Spurs versus Manchester City. Which brings me nicely to Hutch, the book about Tommy Hutchinson.
Great.
And I had a wonderful hour and a half trip down memory lane with Hutch, talking to me about his career. And the full Morty as well. Dennis Mortimer. We've done 5 Legends podcasts in 2022. And Dennis Mortimer, the full Morty, great title, given to him by Andy Blair. So thanks, guys, for your time. All of the authors that have given us time to do podcasts. And I'd worked out, I think I've done about 80 podcasts, as you said earlier, in the, phenomenal amount. Tires me out just thinking about the amount of podcasts. Yeah, and a massive thanks to Alan Hudson and Terry Curran, my regular podcast partners, and SRBMedia and Chriis that produces them all for us. Anything else that you would like to add, or anything else? Titles coming out next year?
Yeah, but I would like to echo everything you just said, and well done to you in putting all that together as well. It's great that we get to hear these stories of those times and brings it to life. It's brilliant. And if I link it to the books, it's great synergy in the podcast. They bring it to life, you hear them talking as well as reading the books. And there's so much. I counted, on this podcast, I've talked about 30 books just in this one podcast. So you think there's so many books out there and stories. So a big thank you to all the publishers and the many authors out there. And a thank you to the followers as well that follow me on Twitter, etc. It's always great to hear good feedback on it. People are finding out new stories, which is essentially what I suppose what I was hoping to do and achieve, is to get people to learn more about football and not just what you hear about in the then and now kind of thing. So, and that's why you do an excellent job. So well done to you, Paul. So, and thank you very much.
Absolutely, and this has been part 10, and we usually do about 2 hours, don't we? Because we just talk about titles of books. Neither of us know where we're going. We just go off at tandems and we talk about various things, and then a book will just crop up in conversation and we'll go down that little avenue. So it's just a podcast that you and I get together, usually about every 4 to 6 weeks, and chat for a couple of hours about football books and promoting football books. And it's a lovely pair of hours, mate. So thank you for your time, as always. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will reconvene in January. It's been some time this year because you'd had holiday, and then we'd had this, and then I'd had a bloody tooth out and what have you, and I've had my mouth all, stitched up and stuff, and what have you, and then with Christmas, and it's all mad. So it's just been a mad year, but it's been a great year.
Yeah. And your mouth's all ready now for the Christmas festivities, drink and food. And
I just put a bit of Argentinian red wine around the... and it's doing heels up, don't it?
Fabulous.
Right.
Excellent.
Thank you for your time, sir. Happy Christmas and great New Year. And
thank you.
Happy reading, guys, is your line, isn't it, that you leave with?
Happy reading all and happy Christmas. Take care of yourselves.
Cheers. Thanks for listening, guys.
All the best.
See you soon. Cheers. Thanks, Andy. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, 2 Pigeons and Coach Prime bemoaning the fact you can stream DirecTV satellite-free.
Look at these humans watching pro football on DirecTV without a satellite dish.
I've been watching them watch football for so long, I feel like I could coach like you, Coach Prime.
Coaching ain't as easy as finding your games on DirecTV. How you gonna beat a corner blitz on 3rd and long?
I'd probably just fly over it.
Actually, that's pretty good.
Stream football without a satellite dish. Visit DirecTV.com.